Welcome back to the Gut Girls podcast. We're going to dive right in to a topic that really we get a lot of questions about, and it is sickness. It's actually post sickness. So after a virus, strep throat, maybe even surgery, I'll throw that one in. But this one hits close to home this week because one of our gut girls, Angela, was actually not feeling well this week. So tell us a little bit about what symptoms you were experiencing and what was going on.
Yeah, Diana, before we hit record, you were even saying like, "Hey, even this even happens to us as the gut girls," which is so true. So what happened last week was I'm pretty sure it was food poisoning, so like some kind of foodborne illness that just swept through my body. And I say that because my girls did not get sick. So I'm assuming that if it was the norovirus, we would have passed it down, to everyone in the family. And it didn't happen that way. It was actually just me and my husband, which probably happened from a meal that we ate and the girls just missed. So good for them, right? But it just swept through my entire body to where I just had I was completely wiped out. In fact, Diane and we were supposed to be working, remember? And I texted you and I was like, I cannot get out of bed. I took almost 2 full days and it was just severe waves of stomach cramping. And I remember at one point being like, do I have pancreatitis? This feels so terrible, right? And it ended up being, like I said, just some kind of foodborne illness that I picked up. Guys, it's everywhere. I mean, we live in a world full of bugs and we are constantly exposed. And so this podcast is going to walk you through really the ins and outs of what to do when those exposures happen, because they can happen to anyone.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm thankful that your girls didn't get sick because at least you weren't trying to take care of yourself and take care of your girls while you felt awful. So, but I'm glad you're feeling better and we're glad you're back recording your podcast again. So if you're listening and you have had sickness before, it could have been years and years ago, and maybe your gut still is not feeling back up to par again. Maybe you've just recently gotten sick and you don't feel like you're back to normal. Or maybe you're like, I've actually beat this. You might be around the corner. And in case you are, you may want to jot down some notes or keep this podcast in mind so you can refer back to it. So if that's you and you're thinking, my gut is not back to normal, there's so much about what we walk our clients through and what they can do post sickness. So tell us about why it's so important post sickness to really stay in tune with your gut. And even when you're feeling better, why not to stop?
Yeah, well, guys, just to open your eyes up a little bit to, whether it's a foodborne illness, like Dana said in the beginning, whether it's even post-procedure in the hospital, or, just post-viral load, guys, your gut is the most vulnerable here during that time, right? Right when the wave has passed and now you're recovering. But that's also why your gut, or the time that your gut is the most responsive. So it's just a moment in time where it's almost like I say to our clients, it's a window of opportunity for it to open up, the opportunity for sickness to then set in, or it's an opportunity for healing. And if you aren't aware of that vulnerable moment, you totally miss it altogether. And inflammation then lingers and digestion gets sluggish and symptoms show up weeks and months, sometimes a year later. And then this is what we hear when clients are like, this just happened out of nowhere. And Diana, our brains are spinning thinking, no, there's a story here. And we got to kind of help trace that back to what really set this off.
Yeah, it's amazing. We can actually see some of this on the GI map test. So I want to talk about a couple of the basics, during the sickness, taking antibiotics. What actually, tell us kind of the big things, the picture that happens inside the gut once you've taken an antibiotic.
Okay, so that's a great place to go. So one of the biggest things that we'll see on the GI map is the gut lining gets irritated. And think about it. I mean, let's talk about my, instance here with some kind of foodborne illness. Yes, I mean, there's so much inflammation, right? So that gut lining is the first thing where the inflammation shows up. And once that happens, it's not just one layer, guys. That gut lining also has this really important mucosal mucosal layer, which is your immune system. So when inflammation starts showing up in that gut lining, that's when you start losing, the strength of the immune system. And then it's like this cascade. So then the good bacteria fall low, and so then once they get wiped out, then that's that vulnerable moment, right? Now the lining is ripped away, the good bacteria have dropped, and then if that stays, what we see is like chronicity on the GI map. So it's like this extreme chronicity of fatigue. When I say that, it's not like we can see fatigue on the GI map, but what fatigue does look like as far as markers on the GI map is you see everything starting to like dwindle down. So then you see like the liver function, that detoxification function even start to dwindle down. And so then that's like, oh, hey, we can look at that map and be like, this person, this has been going on for a while, so it's so cool to see that story right on the GI map. And then the goal afterwards, guys, is kind of simple in when I say it, but it does take time, right? It does take time to heal the gut. But the thought is when we see this happen on a GI map, then it's like, okay, now we want to soothe that gut, right? We want to soothe that gut lining. We want to replenish the good bacteria, so bring up the good bacteria again. We want to feed the new bacteria so they start to colonize, and then we want to strengthen the immune system. So it's really cool to see the story, but then be able to say to the client, but there's also a solution, right, to bring you back on track.
Yeah. So let's dive into kind of that roadmap. You talked about soothing the gut, repairing the gut lining. A lot of people, they kind of think, oh, my stomach hurts, so yeah, I need to repair this stomach. But I kind of want you to dive a little bit deeper. Explain to us a little bit about what the gut lining, what that actually means. And, you've talked about some of the inflammation and, strengthen this mucosal lining. So dive in a little bit deeper and tell us what that means and how we can kind of work on soothing the gut lining.
Yeah, that might sound foreign to a lot of people, and they may think like, I don't actually even know what this means, so I'm not gonna, stay listening. But let me just catch your attention for a second, guys. You do want to listen when you start to see the effects of it, which would be like food sensitivities. And that's what many people come to us. Like our clients are like, I can't handle the food I used to handle. So if that's you, this actually does matter, even though it might not sound fancy, right? But soothing the gut lining, guys, think of it as if I use my fingers and like intercross them, once the gut lining gets inflamed, it actually starts to open up and you get like what they call leaky gut, which is like holes in the gut lining. So when we're soothing it, you're actually like pushing those holes, the openings back together, and then you're making them strong and robust, because again, that's where food sensitivities happen, right? So the key though, guys, if you're listening, is you don't just have let's say a stomach bug, and then the next day go back to eating what you enjoy eating. Like I'm thinking like, gosh, do you enjoy eating cheeseburgers, hamburgers, whatever it is, pasta, like the standard American diet that everyone eats? Like, oh my goodness, no, because you're adding then inflammation on top of gut lining inflammation. So where you start, this is where you want to write this down, is first you've got to bring down the inflammation. You cannot heal in a gut where the gut lining is inflamed. So the first step in healing that gut lining and to preventing food sensitivities from happening is to lower the inflammation. And then you can strengthen after that. But, if we go back, Diana, think of kids, right? Like if I said the girls actually were saved from this, which was great. But let's say the girls had gotten sick, think of like their little itty bitty guts. How would we even start, from kids to adults? I think one thing that works the same is warm foods. So one way to start bringing the inflammation down is to bring in some warm, simple foods. I think of you often, actually, I thought of you so much post this little bug I had, because I was like, give me all the bone broth that you can find. We had homemade bone broth. We had bought a little bit extra not to run out, because that was the first thing I went back to. When I felt okay to eat or drink anything, I was like, I want bone broth, because it's an electrolyte. It's warm. It's got all the amino acids acids that rebuild the gut lining. And at that point, guys, after you have like the stomach bug or a virus, it's not like you want to be eating like a steak, right? But you need the benefits of protein. You need the amino acids.
So I love that you've given us kind of this roadmap to go by to be able to heal this gut lining. But sometimes, a lot of our listeners may not actually know what the gut lining means. What does that actually mean? And you talked a lot about inflammation and stuff. So tell us a little bit more about kind of where to start in healing the gut and why you would not just stop when like, oh, I think I feel better. Why do you not stop?
Yeah, that's a great question. So to be more specific for everyone listening, we had talked a little bit about like food sensitivities and how that leaky gut lining can cause those food sensitivities. So the first thing you want to do there is bring down the inflammation, because if you leave a gut lining inflamed or a gut inflamed, no matter what food you're putting in, that's what will increase the risk of those food sensitivities downstream. So the first thing you want to do is bring the inflammation down. Obviously, the first way that comes to my mind is going to be through diet, right? Because after you have a virus, after you have a foodborne illness of some sort, you've basically pretty much fasted, right? They always say like, starve the virus, like let the body kind of deal with it while it's acute. But then after that, when you're starting to bring food back in, if you bring inflammatory food back in, you're just going to increase the inflammation and increase the cascade. But if you start recovery with like warmer foods, think of like, Dinah, I think of you often, I did especially post recovery of my own episode, but bone broth, like that's your jam. You love it. And so we had so much homemade bone broth made, thank goodness, that was the first thing I was going back to was bone broth. And guys, that works for kids too. I mean, a lot of kids will sip on, like if you make a soup, like the broth. So getting bone broth into kids, adults, post virus or gut bug is one of the best ways to do it. And then warm foods. Warm foods keeps everything open because remember the gut shuts down after some kind of gut bug. So warming up the colon, warming up the GI tract allows food to keep processing through the body so that you're not getting constipation and fermentation of food just sitting in the gut. So you want to open up the gut, you want to bring inflammation down, and warm cooked foods are the way to do it. And then I think of bone broth right away, mainly because it's got electrolytes, right? Which everyone typically gets dehydrated during these kind of ailments. And so you've got the electrolyte there, but then you have amino acids, which are so key for rebuilding that gut lining that we just talked about. So that's one of the, I think, easiest things to begin with post ailment like that.
Yeah. And, I was sitting here thinking about you drinking bone broth. A lot of times I hear people talking about, wanting comfort foods during sickness sometimes, like somebody will, take their kid to the doctor maybe and then run by and get them Starbucks or run by and get them Sonic or whatever. And of course, we're not here to judge you for doing that, but just to educate you that it's really important during that time of sickness that you do start rebuilding the gut right away with the good things and driving down the inflammation. And we all know sugar has lots and lots of inflammation. So it's really just hindering that immune system being able to kind of rebuild itself. So all of that is really such a big part of having a healthy immune system is the gut lining, because roughly 80%, don't quote me on that, but roughly 80% of our immune system is housed in the gut. So if it's been broken down with this sickness, we really have to build that back up for more sicknesses that's going to come, because it's right around the corner. It's inevitable. We're going to get sick at some point. But thankfully we have these things in our Gut Girls membership. And as a client, a lot of times when we're working with people, we have some supplements and things that we love too that kind of help with that. Like we love GI Revive and some different things that can really kind of help soothe the gut lining. So some of those things we talk more in the membership. But if you're just listening right now, we would just suggest starting with those warm bone broths, things like that can kind of rebuild that gut lining, driving down the sugar and the inflammation and all of those things is kind of the first step. And so let's talk about the second step. When we take an antibiotic, even when we're just sick, a lot of times we lose some of the good things. So talk about us replenishing with the good.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because sometimes we see that good bacteria drop on a GI map and people will say like I wasn't on an antibiotic and it's like you don't have to be actually. Stress can do that. Post virus, post I just had like foodborne illness. I mean, that was honestly my first thought. I was and guys, I mean, this is what we do for a living. So the things that went through my mind was like, oh my gosh, my good flora is probably wiped out. Thank goodness. And this is what we teach you as a Gut Girl member is being prepared. I mean, I know as a mom, don't you feel good when like your child gets sick, but you're prepared, like you have something in the pantry. So I mean, I went right to my pantry and I had all the things. So I was like, I can get started today. You know what I mean? Like right away on this. So along with the bone broth, something that I did was starting a probiotic. Now, this is what I love about knowing the GI map and what we know, Diana, is it's not just any probiotic. I'm not just going out and buying an over the counter random probiotic. We know that there are specific probiotics when E. coli shows up, when salmonella shows up, when campylobacter shows up. And guys, those are all, pathogens from foodborne illnesses. So luckily I had, the one that we typically, recommend. And I was starting it right away because I was like, okay, I'm doing my bone broth. I'm getting inflammation down. Now I want to replenish this good bacteria. I want to bind to any of that pathogenic, stuff left over. So I started that probiotic, right away. And so, like you said, replenishing the good bacteria is so important. And honestly, guys, once a virus or, something like a foodborne illness sweeps through the gut, it typically is not going to bounce back with just food. Because remember, in that moment, the gut actually shuts down. It like goes into this freeze state. So even if you start eating, like if you're the cleanest eater and say like right away, I'm jumping back into my wide variety of, rainbow colored diet. I just want to remind you, like your gut's not even in the state to digest that yet. So you typically aren't going to bounce back right away with just food. That's where like the gentle powders come in for probiotics. I know for kids, we have a lot of the gentle powders that you can start kiddos in after they get sick or get a gut bug or a chewable form of a probiotic. But for definitely, something that I just experienced, knowing a targeted strain to use. The one that I'm specifically talking about is they call it like a phage like style of a probiotic, which again might sound totally foreign to you guys listening, but this is the kind of stuff we educate you on as a Gut Girl member. You've got to know the difference. And I'll end by this question you asked, Diana, by saying, doesn't this hit home for so many people that say like, but I've done the probiotics and I didn't see a difference? And it's like, well, this is your answer, guys, because it wasn't specifically targeted to what just wiped through your body.
That's so interesting. And I'm also thinking, when I was thinking about what we replenish, obviously our minds, like, you think gut, you think probiotic. That's what we've kind of all heard. That's what we've seen on social media and Facebook and everywhere. But something a lot of times that we teach in our membership, and I'm going to teach here too, is our B vitamins go. When we're sick, we're depleted of our B vitamins, and it's kind of hard to get those back again. So, and the B vitamins play a huge role in your immune system and all the different processes of our body, and including, liver detoxification and everything. So if you're depleted of those B vitamins, that's something else that really needs to be replenished too. So again, something we teach like in the GI or in the membership, and then, when we do a GI map on someone, sometimes it's not just about picking that right probiotic. It's also like, hey, are you taking a good methylated B vitamin where your body is really absorbing that? Because if you have had lots of recurring sickness, you might be really depleted of B vitamins. So it's things like that to really think about in replenishing. And then, we talk again a lot about probiotics and things, but this word prebiotics kind of comes up too in that. So if you could briefly kind of tell us a little bit about the prebiotics and kind of what that means as far as like, well, everybody knows about probiotics. Tell me about the prebiotics.
Yeah, it's interesting because now we even have, postbiotics out. So, and people are probably like, "What? What is all of this?" So the prebiotics, guys, it's if you just take a probiotic, you heard me just say the word a few minutes ago about colonization, meaning like you want that bacteria that's in the probiotic to make its home in your gut. So that's called colonization, right? We want that. We want them to stay. We want them to build a home there. We want them to grow in number. So to do that, you have to feed them, right? So that's the prebiotic. So you've got your probiotic, which is the bacteria, the strain, but then the prebiotic is the food that helps that probiotic strain colonize or take home in your gut. So, and most people miss that part because coming back after some kind of viral load or stomach bug, you can't just jump into fiber right away. Like I just said, guys, the stomach just shuts down during those episodes. And so it's knowing which kind of prebiotics to introduce first. And I would say, even before the prebiotics, it's getting your nervous system in a state to kind of accept these types of foods. Because if you're wound up, I mean, yes, you're exhausted post viral load, but your nervous system is like wound up exhausted. Do you ever hear that term like wired and tired? Like at the same time, that's your nervous system after a viral load. So you've got to calm the nervous system down. And once you do, then bringing in these prebiotics, sorry, like I think of berries. I think of, we go back to the slightly green bananas. We have those in our house all the time. We just buy them super green and then we let them just ripen enough to where they're like just starting to turn but still more green. Getting that in is can be a form of a gentle prebiotic. So you've got things like berries, you've got things like those green, bananas, and then you've got the whole other end of the spectrum, which is like garlic and onions. But it's like I pause there because, guys, if you started bringing in onions and garlics right after a viral load, this is actually like what we see so often is then you're the client that comes to us like a year later that is like, oh my gosh, I can't eat any vegetable out there. Like I can't touch it with a 10-foot pole and it bloats me immediately. That's because you introduced the wrong prebiotic. It was too fibrous, and you introduced it into a vulnerable gut post, foodborne illness or something like that. And now your body remembers that. Guys, the body keeps the score. Like your body remembers everything. And now it can't even handle the sight of those, large amounts of garlic and onion. And we see that client time after time after time. So it's starting gentle with prebiotics, and then as the gut heals, bringing in the more harsher, like fibrous prebiotics that do have benefit, right? Just at the right time. So I hope that's helpful and kind of hits home for some people today.
Yeah, I love that you say the body keeps the score, and you always say the gut keeps the score too. And I was thinking in my head, I was like, while you were talking about the foods to introduce and stuff, I can guarantee you didn't eat a salad, in the first couple of days, like this raw big old salad, because that would really upset your stomach even more. And even though that, colorful foods and things post sickness, it's really about like those warm bone broths and really like you talked about those amino acids and stuff. So really be mindful. And even when you start introducing vegetables, cook those vegetables down a little bit so that they're easier to digest, and easier to digest that fiber. So yeah, you probably didn't go back into a big old salad, did you?
I still haven't even eaten a salad. To be honest, for the first probably like 4 or 5 days, it was all soups and stews,
Yeah.
honestly. Even my husband made a homemade ramen, which is, how you make like the soft boiled egg and it's all a bunch of homemade bone broth and it was some rice noodles. But I just, sucked up that egg and I had that bone broth. I mean, still, like it took me 5, 6 days before I wanted to even touch anything super fibrous. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about like your immune system obviously took a bit of a hit here. And so, but thankfully, I mean, who knows how long you could have been sick if, it would have been more than a day and a half. You were in bed, roughly a day and a half, something like that. And so, thankfully you were in a good condition to actually have this happen to you so that you bounce back rather quickly. I want you to talk a little bit first about just kind of the immune system stuff, and then I'm going to go into like some other kind of detoxing things that you did. But tell us like specifically about what you did to kind of support the immune system.
Yeah. Luckily too, like right now we're in the time of year where we still have a lot of sun up here in Virginia. So honestly, we have a little patio and I put my little Adirondack chair out there and I sat and just soaked up the sun and it felt so good, guys. So I mean, one of the biggest things you can do post sickness like that is get outside and get sunlight. I mean, there's just it's almost like it like just renews your entire body. You guys know exactly what I'm talking about. It feels so good. And then yes, there's going to be times of the year like in the winter season, but I would even encourage you. There's still the winter sunlight. It's not as like hot as far as like yeah, you're in layers, but get your face outside and get that sunlight early in the morning on your skin. It definitely can help. And then the specific foods too can support your immune system. So foods that are rich in vitamin C. I actually took some powdered vitamin C to be honest, just to boost a little bit of the immune support. So I added that and some electrolytes into my water to get that back right away. But doing that, eating some of those berries like we talked about, they can serve as a prebiotic, but they can also serve as a really strong antioxidant to support the immune system. And I also did smoothies, brought in like small little amounts of smoothies just because I could load them up with, Dana, you mentioned the B vitamins, but like my greens powder, like anything that was going to enhance my immune system, I was all about it. And so that's what I encourage you to do right away, to target that immune system.
Yeah, I think about, I mentioned a couple of different supplements earlier, and you said the phages and the probiotics. But one of the things that I think about here to kind of give yourself that immune system boost is electrolyte synergy from Designs for Health. I love that one because it does have, I believe, 500 milligrams of vitamin C in it. Plus, it has the zinc and so many different things to kind of replenish once you've kind of lost some of that. So I do love the electrolyte synergy, and obviously the sunlight for the vitamin D. Supplementing. One of the things that I do actually starting usually about September, October is I always make sure that I'm doing additional vitamin D during the winter months. So from now until March, April-ish, I actually add an additional 5,000 IU of vitamin D. I just know that my vitamin D tends to run a little bit on the lower side. And so to keep mine up, I do 5,000 IU all throughout the year. Actually, that seems like a good maintenance for me. And then I do bump mine to 10,000. But you could get your vitamin D run. Actually, you can do that through our membership at a very inexpensive cost, and but you can also tack that on, if you go see your doctor or whatever, and talk to them about how much vitamin D you need. So that's another option for you as well. And so I want to talk about once you kind of got back to the land of the living and you felt like chatting with me a little bit, we text some and I was like, okay, are you doing all your things? What are you doing? And so she literally sent me a giant list of all the things that she was doing. She's like, she yogaed, she saunaed, she tried to move her body. Obviously, this is when she started feeling better. So tell us a little bit more about what you did and why.
Yeah. So I hit the sauna up. I've been to sauna already like 4 times, and this just happened like last week. So I've been like sweating it out. And what's honestly helped me the most right now is getting in the sauna for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then jumping into like an ice cold shower at the gym right after. My goodness, I felt like it just snapped my nervous system right out of what it was, like the funk that it was in. I literally texted Diana and I was like, listen, like it's funny if you guys could see our gut girls like text back and forth, but I was like, that like the gut and the brain have this huge connection, and I feel so like just unmotivated today. Like I'm just like clearly I feel like I got gut punched and it totally affected my brain, which is so phenomenal to me, guys. Like even as a gut girl to then experience it, like when people say like they get down after a virus and they can't get out of the funk, it's because your gut just got wrecked over, and like the gut brain connection is so real. So I felt like for me, especially with littles, right? You can't really stay down that long. I was like, I've got to snap back out of it. So I wanted my nervous system to reboot. So doing the hot sauna, jumping into the cold shower right after, I just could feel this immediate switch. And then I did text Diana. I was like, I just did yoga and I was doing inversions because, guys, I wanted my lymph system to get completely like flush from head to toe. And so getting into yoga and putting the body like literally like doing backward inversions just to get the head up, the feet feet up over my head and let all that blood rush up to the head, and then to, get into a different position of yoga and let the blood then rush back. Guys, I'm basically just I'm letting my lymph system in that like moment just collect everything along the way and then flush it out. And it felt so good. I mean, I did actually bounce back pretty quickly, which felt so good. And I want to take a step back and say, the vitamin D, honestly, Dinah, I would contribute some of my bounce back to, I was taking the 10,000 for probably a solid month and a half by now, because we're in almost middle of November. So, I mean, I was for about a month and a half, maybe a month, I was up at 10,000 because I knew this. I have two littles. I knew this was coming. Something was coming, right? Like we're hitting fall, we're hitting early winter. I knew this was happening. So I think that helped me a ton. And then I don't want to downplay this for a second, but in our lab shop, guys, vitamin D is usually $80 to run a simple marker that speaks so much about your immune resilience. Do you guys know that during the COVID years, research showed that someone with a vitamin D of 55 or above handled that viral load better than someone with a vitamin D 55 or below? And Diana, how many times do our clients come to us with vitamin Ds in the 20s or 30s? And so guys, that's why we created the lab shop membership, so that you can get your vitamin D. Diana, how much is it to get a vitamin D?
I knew you were going to ask me. I don't know, $20, something like
you on the
that.
spot.
I don't know, $30, $40, under $50. I'll say that.
Yeah.
And I was going to say too, a lot of times, like when you get lab work back from your doctor, and of course, I mean, anything that we're reviewing here, we are not doctors. We are just trying to provide some education with what we do. But if you get your lab work back, a lot of times that range that they put on the lab work is not for optimization. It's not for an optimal vitamin D. A lot of times the range is from 30 to let's say 100 or something like that. So if you're a 31, it's not going to pop high, and your doctor may or may not tell you that that's a high number or that that's a low number. And where we see it, we're like, oh, a 31, might as well be in the low 20s, or, we got to do some work here for your vitamin D. So I just want to urge you to, do your own research, look at those lab numbers. And I know it can be a little bit confusing. So if you need us, we would love for you to be a Gut Girl member. And I want to mention one more thing. When you're recovering and you're talking about the lymphatic, the sauna, all of that stuff, especially post-virus, post-sickness, making sure you're drinking adequate water during that time, because when you do need to urinate more, because we're trying to flush out that. So when you're working on the sauna and you're doing the lymphatic, make sure you're drinking plenty of water to stay hydrated and literally try to eliminate and move that virus out. So a couple things just to recap. You mentioned soothing the gut lining first. We talked about adding back the beneficial bacteria, feeding the bacteria with good quality fiber once we can kind of handle it, but doing that gently. And then, of course, also boosting the immune system, rehydrating, trying to kind of detox a little bit, all of those kind of things. So hopefully this is helpful. Again, if you're recovering from a sickness, or, if it's possible over the next few months, during the winter months, a lot of times we see increased sickness. So hopefully that will be helpful with you guys. If you need us, you can go to our website, gutgirls.health. We would love for you to become a member. You can chat with us, do a free 15-minute consultation. There's just to chat with us and see where to get started. So hope you guys have a fantastic day, and we will catch you next time on the next episode. The Gut Girls podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. We are not acting as licensed medical professionals. Always consult your doctor before making any changes to your health routine.